Hey, welcome to Goals, Grit, and some woo-woo shit. I'm your host, Una Duncan, and today we are talking to my friend and business mentor, Stu McLaren. Stu helps experts transform their knowledge and influence into recurring revenue by launching, growing, and scaling 7- and 8-figure membership sites. So that's what his bio says. And I know it's true because Stu was one of my original teachers when I first started my online fitness membership. And today I'm in his mastermind group. So this is like a small group of people with established membership businesses. And we are in every niche. We've got artists, we've got pet business owners, subscription box businesses. And these are some of the coolest, smartest people I know. And 3 times a year, we gather from all over the world and we meet in person to support and help each other grow our businesses. So I wanted to introduce you to Stu because he's going to talk about the goal of making so much freaking money that you can give away 90% of it. How fun does that sound? Check it out.
Breaking news. Your dream life isn't going to happen because you made a vision board. You're going to need goals, grit, and some woo-woo shit. This podcast is about getting clarity on what you want, having the grit to do the actual work, and most importantly, constantly training your brain to be your bitch. Ready to be inspired? Here is your host, best-selling author, Una Duncan.
Oh my gosh. Stu McLaren, thank you so much for being here.
Buddy, I'm excited to be here, especially with you. Let's do this.
Okay, let's start by you telling people what it is that you do.
I help people generate more recurring revenue in their business. And I do that by teaching them how to launch, grow, and scale a profitable membership site. And so when we think of membership sites, like I want people thinking about like all of the things that we sign up for, things like, Netflix, things like Amazon Prime, things like Disney Plus. Those are all subscriptions, but so are like any subscriptions that we have, like socks of the month or, tea of the month or coffee of the month. Those are all subscriptions. And subscriptions are dominating the business landscape, and rightfully so, because they provide stability and predictability for people in their business. And so what we teach and have taught for decades is how to take the things that you know, love, and do and package it in a membership so that you as a business owner are generating recurring revenue in your business. That's what we do.
Hell yeah, Stu. Okay, now wait a second, listeners. I said in the intro that Stu is one of my business mentors. Now, can you just listen to how amazing he is at explaining what he does and how it benefits you? So good. So Stu, I was reading your bio and all that stuff that's about you on the net, and you believe that recurring membership is the greatest tool to create positive change in the world. Can you tell us about that?
Well, look, I think, and I may be making a big generalization here, but I think for your audience, it's going to be 100% accurate. I think deep down, we all want to do good. We all want to help others. And there's this desire within us, to be able to help others. But I think where we fall short is like initially we got to put food on the table. We got to keep a roof over our head. We got to keep our bills paid. Like that's priority number one. And then the giving and the generosity that comes if we've got excess. That's typically how our, brains work.
Yeah.
The reason I love recurring revenue is because it eliminates one of the most prominent friction points for all entrepreneurs, and I may even say all people, which is finances and certainty with their finances. And as a business owner, like when you don't know where your sales are going to come from the next month, or if they even will come the next month, it creates a level of anxiety within you. And that anxiety prevents you from being generous because you're like, well, I'm going to hold on to this because I really don't know what's going to happen next month. And I want to have, some cushion just in case. And so the reason I love recurring revenue and memberships is it provides certainty. It creates predictability for people. So now they know with certainty that they're going to get paid by X number of people next month because they're on subscription. And that alleviates that anxiety and it opens them up to freely give to causes and people that they're passionate about. So my hope is that every business owner, number one, adds some type of recurring revenue to their business. And when they do, number two, it opens them up to now be able to give more freely and generously to people and causes that they're passionate about.
I love that. Do you think though that everybody really that's what they're going to do with their extra money? Like, do you think it's impossible that there's just like douchebags out there who want a 20th car?
There are 100% douchebags out there that want, their 20th car. And then they're going to tell you about it with their, Lambo pics and, all the things for sure. But at the end of the day, like, I think that as much as there are that group of people, there's another group of people who do love to give. And my hope is that the more entrepreneurs who have that stability and predictability, who are generously giving, it will create a movement. And where the movement is more about how much did you give last month and not, how many cars do you have? I would love for there to be a scenario where people are bragging about how much they've given to causes and people that they're passionate about and the experiences that they created for others and the generosity that they're extending to others. I would love for people to be bragging about that, because then that means we're putting more good out into the world. So I don't think that everybody is going to fall into that category, but I do think that we can influence, and I think we can inspire, and I think we can create a movement so that more people are.
Well, you know what? I think you do create that environment, which is why I signed up for your mastermind, because this is an area I want to stretch myself in. And you know that if you want to stretch yourself, you surround yourself by people who are doing that. So really, that is one of the things that I wanted to be around you for, because you do create that environment where people are pushed to give more. And I want to ask you about you. Now, I have this thing in my head. Tell me if I made it up. I have this thing that you have a goal to do reverse tithing. Can you explain what tithing is, what reverse tithing is, and why that's your goal?
Well, okay. So traditional tithing is you keep 90% of what you make for yourself and you give away 10% to a cause or passion or church that you belong to. That's traditional tithing. Keep 90%, give away 10. But what if we flip that? What if we could live on 10% and give away 90%? Now, the reason this is just like a complete mind twist for a lot of people is they're like, what? Live on 10%? Are you kidding me? I don't want to live in a tiny shack and shelter. I like the luxuries of life.
Yeah.
But hold up. What if you could have all the luxuries of life that you want still within that 10%? Well, that's the beauty of being an entrepreneur. As an entrepreneur, there's no limits in how much we can make. So you figure out what your ideal life costs, and then you just 10x that. That's how much you got to make. Okay, away we go. So yeah, Amy and I, we definitely have that goal and that intention. We're not there yet. We're working towards it, whereby, when we get to the point of, retirement, so to speak, we are living on 10%, giving away 90%. And yet still enjoying the fruits of life that we want to enjoy. And to me, all that is just a matter of thinking bigger, thinking wider, and realizing that there's no limits for us as entrepreneurs. And so, yes, that is a goal. I'm super excited by it. I'm proud of it. And to me, I think the reason that oftentimes people don't get there is they don't figure out what the cost of their ideal life is. And so their life actually, it expands. So you talk about in your words, the douchebag who wants the 20th car. Why does he want a 20th car? Is that actually going to bring him more joy and happiness? Who knows? Maybe it does. I don't know. But what I would love to encourage everybody to think about is what does the ideal lifestyle look like for you? How much does that cost so that it's bringing you joy and happiness and enabling you to do all the things you want to do? Then just 10x that, and that's your goal, to be able to eventually live on 10%, give away 90%.
So is this something that you track? Do you track every year what percentage you're giving away and you're working your way up to 90?
100%. Yep. And here's another interesting fact. Typically when people make more money, if they are coming from a very generous heart and generous place, they do actually give more from a dollar perspective to charities and causes. Mm-hmm. But what actually decreases, Una, is the percentage. Yeah. Yes. So what if that maintained? What if it was steady, meaning like the more money you make, the more you give away? Mm-hmm. And I'm saying this both as entrepreneurs, but I'm also saying it for, companies too. Like we as a company, we give away a huge chunk of money every year to different causes and charities and so forth. And the goal is that the more money we make as an organization, that percentage stays steady and the more we give away. Now, there's always going to be factors that play into this, but I just love using a percentage as a general guideline to be able to give more as you make more.
Yeah. So now, when you said you're like, so you just figure out what you need to make and then you 10x that, you're like, ta-da! So were you always that certain that you could do that? Because a lot of people will be like, oh, okay, I'll just 10x that. Like, tell me why you have that certainty and clarity that people can just do that.
I've just been inspired. Like I've been inspired by, amazing entrepreneurs before me. There's a YouTube video that I highly recommend everybody go and watch. You go to YouTube and I want you to do a search for The Secret Billionaire. The Secret Billionaire. And it's the story of a gentleman by the name of Chuck Feeney. Now, most people around the world probably have no clue who that guy is. Well, when I watched the video, I was just like, I was blown away by this man's generosity. And essentially, he was the guy that created the airport duty-free shops. And so he created that concept, that idea. He made billions of dollars and he felt ridiculously guilty about all the money that he was making. Mm-hmm. So much so that he was secretly giving away hundreds of millions of dollars to different causes and organizations and schools and so forth. And then when he turned 75, he had this moment where he said, you know what, like, I'm going to be more public about it and I'm going to share it in the hope that it will inspire others. And well, first off, I'm so glad that he did because it really inspired me. And anyways, so he started sharing it. And his goal was to give away all of his money before he died. Now, that meant that he was giving away over $1 million a day to people and causes that he was passionate about. And now, 2 years ago, October, he succeeded in giving away all of his money. Now he's still alive, which, thank goodness for Chuck still being alive, but he had given away all of his money except for $2 million that he had saved for he and his wife, where that's all they need to be able to continue, to live the life that they want to lead. Now he's given away billions and billions and billions of dollars. And I just thought about that. And I was just thinking, gosh, that's like, it's so incredibly inspiring that he's used this skill set of growing a business and used it to make billions of dollars and then use that billions of dollars to just impact so many incredible causes. And that's super inspiring for me. And there's all kinds of examples like this, like the Paul Newman salad dressing. That whole company was built and the proceeds from that, the profits from that go directly to charity. And I just love the idea of using business and commerce to be able to create revenue and sales and profits, which then can be distributed to causes. Because, my wife and I run our own nonprofit. And the number one challenge for a nonprofit is that it's typically a nonprofit is dependent on donations. And so when times are good, donations are good. Yeah. When times are tough, donations dry up. And that means that a lot of nonprofits and great causes can't do their best work. Well, imagine if they never had to worry about how much money was coming in because they'd always have the overhead covered. Well, that's, to me, the opportunity that we have as business owners is to kind of flip the script, so to speak, and be able to generate a ton of money, be able to give it to causes that we're passionate about, and do a whole lot of good.
So what came first for you, this impulse to give or the drive to make money?
Oh, Una, I started my business when I was a 20-year-old with an ego. So I was probably one of those douchebags that you were talking about. Like I wanted to make money. I had desires to, become a millionaire, so to speak. Like that was always a goal.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it came from the fact that, growing up, my parents were two of the most amazing parents, but they both worked ridiculously hard. My dad worked, both my parents worked 2 full-time jobs. So my dad, he worked from 9 a.m. till 3 p.m. in a high school with kids with special needs. And then 4 nights a week, he would work 8 p.m. till 8 a.m. in a group home with people with special needs. So I don't know when he slept, but he was always at every basketball game and soccer game. But man, he just worked really, really hard. And then my mom was very similar. She worked from 9 a.m. till 3 p.m. in an elementary school with kids with autism. And then the 3 nights a week that my dad wasn't working, she was working in a fine dining restaurant as a waitress. And so my parents, they just worked really, really hard. And we were never the most financially successful family by any means. We were a lower middle class family, and yet my parents were working so hard. And one day when I was roughly around 12 years old, I just had this aha moment where I was just like, there's nobody that works harder than my parents. And yet we're not the most financially successful family. So what's the difference here?
Yeah.
And it sent me on this quest to figure out, like, how do I make more money? How do I become wealthy? Because there's people that are making a lot more money than my parents that don't work a fraction as hard as my parents. So, what's the difference? And so initially it was about making more money, to be able to have more experiences, to provide more for the people that I love. And then I would say the transition to then using that skill set of making money to be able to give more really came from the influence of my wife, Amy. She has always been somebody who loves to travel, specifically travel to remote areas of different countries. And one year we were watching, Oprah had a show called The Big Give, and we would watch it religiously together. And basically Oprah would go into a community in North America. She would donate like $100,000 to this particular family, and they would transform this family's life. And Amy and I would watch it, and we'd be in tears afterwards. And we'd be like, oh my God, this is so amazing. But then one time she said to me, she's like, I really want to do this. And I was like, yeah, for sure, honey. Like, what are you talking about? She's like, no, like, I want to do what Oprah's doing, but for a community in one of the developing countries that, I've traveled to.
And did you guys have money at the time?
No, we had some, our business was just starting to grow.
Right.
And I was like, okay, yeah, sure. And she's like, but I said, well, when do you want to do this? And she said, over the Christmas holidays. Now, to put it in perspective, we're having this conversation. It's the beginning of December. Christmas holidays is literally a couple weeks away. I'm like, babes, come on. She's like, look, you're the business guy. You figure out how to raise the money. I will figure out the trip and all the details of that and the community that we're going to. Let's make it happen. So we did an online fundraiser, and we raised $14,000. And that was the beginning. And Amy always said, you'll understand the value of giving and the impact it can have when you go and you see the people that you're going to be giving it to. And so we went on that trip, Una, and it was a game changer for me. And I remember on that flight home, I turned to Amy and I said, okay, I get it. How do we figure this out? And that's when we began our journey of starting our nonprofit. But so I give Amy all the credit. She's always had the vision for it. She's always had the heart for it, but she's converted me, and I'm all in. I love making money, and I love giving it away.
Hey, if you're liking this podcast, you might also like my book, Healthy as Fuck. It's an international bestseller and available wherever books are sold. The audiobook is especially awesome, if I do say so myself. And if you go to fitfeelsgood.com/healthyaf, I've got a ton of free bonuses for book readers, so make sure you go and grab those. Okay, back to the episode. Tell us about your nonprofit. Hey dude, if you are enjoying this episode and you have a friend that you think might also benefit from this information, please share it with them. That helps my podcast so much, and it's going to help your friend. Share the love. Thanks so much.
So, as I said, Amy really wanted to go to a community. We started with, she found some village up in the mountains of El Salvador that really needed help with a school that they were looking to, revitalize. And so we go to this community. I don't know how she figures all this out, but they don't speak a word of English. We don't speak a word of Spanish. Right. There was a lot of acting going on, but with all this money that we raised, we bought computers for the school, we painted the school, we paid for, 35 plus girls for their school fees to go. It was awesome. Mm-hmm. So then, we're like, okay, we want to do this more. both of us had a heart for Africa. I can't explain it, Una. We're just drawn to that side of the world. And it eventually landed us in Kenya, where we met this incredible woman. Her name's Irene. We call her the Mother Teresa of Africa. She is just like, just an incredible woman who is dedicated to helping rural communities who often get forgotten. And in Kenya, these communities absolutely were being forgotten. And there was literally thousands and thousands of kids who want to go to school but just can't. And so we started there, and with our first community, it was called Shalom. It's still, our school's still there. We visited every year. And we figured out how to build our very first school. This was back in 2009 now. And fast forward to today, you know, we've built 15 schools. Each school will have anywhere between 600 to 800 kids. Wow. So there's more than 5,000 plus kids going to school every day. And it's incredible what we get to do. And so we basically go into these rural communities. We build elementary schools, high schools, and we help these kids get educated.
I love it. You already mentioned Amy and what an inspiration she is to you. And I know that you are very family first. That's part of your brand, but I think that's also who you are. And did you find ever in your career that focusing on family first was a detriment to creating wealth? Like, do you think you've made any sacrifices there?
For sure. 100%. Like, to put it another way, could I have made a lot more money if I didn't focus on family?
Yes,
for sure.
More succinct.
Yeah. But like the end of the day, you know, I'll just put this in perspective. I had a dear friend of mine pass away in December, and that was really hard. That was really hard. And I was reflecting because I was traveling with our family at the time, and you know, I like to involve our kids in these conversations. And I said to them, I said, you know, here's what made Dave amazing. I'm like, Dave was amazing because he believed in people. So if you came to the table with an idea, Dave was the guy that would believe in it when everybody else was doubting it was possible.
Right.
Dave was the guy that was the first person to pick up the phone and start making the idea happen.
Like amplify it.
And Dave, yeah. And I just said, like, you know, he was so incredible in the impact that he had on people, and the way he made you feel, and the way he made you believe in yourself. And so anyway, long story short, I'm sharing this story about Dave because, you know, when our time is up, nobody's going to talk about like how great you are because of how much money you made or how many cars you have, and it's all about the relationships and the depth of those relationships. And I learned from my parents, because they both came from tough upbringings, that family is, at the end of the day, one of the most important, if not the most important thing that we have. And so I'm so grateful to my parents for the upbringing, because they always put family first at great sacrifice, you know, to themselves, to their careers, to the things that they always wanted to do. And so for me, like, I've never lost sight of that. And when Amy and I started our family, she shares similar values. We want to be successful, for sure. We're very ambitious people. We want to make a lot of money. But at the same time, we also want to find a way to be able to do it where we're not sacrificing our time with our family. In fact, we're enhancing our time with our family. And I think that that's a huge distinction that is made available to us today that was not a generation ago. There was no way that my parents could even fathom, you know, making the kind of money or starting the kind of businesses that we have the opportunity to do today, because it just wasn't possible back then. But today it is. So imagine this like beautiful opportunity where you can make a whole lot of money and design a business around the life that you want to lead. And if family's first, then make it a priority and pour into that, because you can create amazing experiences with your family and also make a lot of money, which is, to me, the double win.
Yeah, it's a both and, not an either or. Yeah, I love that. Another thing you talk about a lot is you're kind of anti-hustle. So I think you even tell a story about once listening to another entrepreneur talk about working on Christmas. If you're not working on Christmas, you're not fucking serious, that sort of thing. Can you talk about the anti-hustle and why that's so important to you?
Well, to that point, like it was around Christmas time and I was watching this video on YouTube, and I'll just tell who it is. It was Gary Vaynerchuk, and I love Gary. P.S. Gary, if you're listening to Una's podcast, I want you to know
you should be.
I love and appreciate you. I love the message that you have to share, but this one particular message rubbed me wrong because he was in his office. It was the Friday before Christmas, and the message was, it was like 6 o'clock at night, and he's like, it's 6 o'clock at night, and everybody in the office has gone home. They're all at their Christmas parties. They're all with family, but not me. I've got another meeting at 6:30. I got another one at 9 o'clock. He's like, if you want to succeed in life, you have to hustle your face off.
Yeah.
And I was just like, time out. Like, he has kids the same age as my kids. And I remember watching this video and I'm just like, dude,
what are you doing?
Go home.
Yeah.
Like, this is not the time for that. This is a time to be with the most important people in your life, your family. And so, listen, I'm not saying that my beliefs are better than his. They're just different. But what it did make clear to me was what was important. And what was important for me was that I did not want to hustle my face off. Yeah. That to me is not what I'm interested in. I do want to spend quality time with my family and I want success, but I'm not going to sacrifice, the time with the most important people, just because, to me, it was like, I want to design a business that feeds that fuels my time with my family.
Yeah, for sure. So in this podcast, I want to talk about grit and really pushing through hard stuff in order to accomplish what you want to accomplish. What do you think is the difference between grit and hustle culture? This podcast is made possible by Fit Feels Good, my online fitness and nutrition company. Here's what we do.
I have so many incredible benefits from the MFA program. It literally changed my life. I have the book, Healthy AF. I'm absolutely in love with my life now. I find that the healthy habits that I built are amazing to go back to. The benefits that you're going to see as a woman in your 40s plus are things you could have never imagined. The key, which I know Una talks about over and over again, is loving your body now, not what you're envisioning it to be.
I think grit is about perseverance. I think grit is about a commitment to yourself that you're not going to give up when things get a little bit challenging. And I'm going to share a story with you that's very recent that has nothing to do with business, but has everything to do with business.
Yeah.
So, a few years ago, we wanted to teach our kids how to ski. My wife, Amy, she is a phenomenal skier. She used to race downhill. So she kicks my butt every single time and reminds me of it every time we go skiing. But nonetheless, we wanted to teach our kids to ski because skiing is it's a beautiful sport for families because you can all do it. You can all have fun. There's tons of quality time on the chairlifts and so forth. Now, I would love to say that our kids were totally into skiing right from the get-go. I would love to say they picked up skiing. It was an absolute nightmare, Una. In fact, 2 years ago, I remember we fly out to the western side of Canada, out your way, and we take them to the most beautiful mountain, Whistler, BC, to go skiing. My son is 3 years younger than my daughter. So whatever she's doing, he just thinks that he can do it and he's going to try it. So she starts going down and they had done some basic lessons, beforehand, but they are not skiers at this point. So Marla's going down and she's doing really well. She's not like, trying to barrel down as fast as she can. She's really taking her time. And Sam's like, oh, I'm going to do that. So he starts he's behind her. So he decides to go straight instead of doing his turns. And he gets way too much speed. Boom, he wipes out. And he's just got a face full of snow. And he's just like, I hate skiing. Skiing sucks. I never want to do this again. And we're just like, oh my gosh. And so I picked him up. I'm just like, dude, we got to figure this out because we're going to be doing a lot of it. Yeah. Now, fast forward to recently. We went on a family ski trip, and Una, it was the most epic ski trip we have ever gone on. And Sam still loves to barrel down the mountain, and we now he's good. And so we got to points where we'd be on the mountain and we'd see the chairlift. And so he and Amy would race down, and Marla and I, we would take our time down. But at the end of the ski trip, both kids said to us, they're like, that was amazing. Like, we want to do this more often. Now, I'm sharing all this because I remember in the beginning days, our mutual friend, Jeff, he would say to me, he's like, Stu, when you start off skiing with kids, you just got to keep saying to yourself, this is an investment. This is an investment. This is an investment.
Yeah.
He's like, eventually, if you stick with it, it will pay off, and it'll be one of the most magical things that you do with your family. Mm-hmm. And we hit that turning point on this trip. And now I can't wait for all of our future family ski trips. Now, how does this relate to being an entrepreneur? Because there are going to be those moments, especially in the beginning, when you just want to go full blast down the mountain, just like Sam, right. But you're going to fall flat on your face, and it's going to hurt, and it's going to feel uncomfortable, and you're not going to want to ski. You're not going to want to be an entrepreneur. You're going to want to give up the first challenge that you face. But the magic of being an entrepreneur and grit, which was your initial question, is just sticking with it, is just persevering with it. Because all along the way, you're learning whether you realize it or not. And all of these little lessons that may not be apparent or obvious are stacking up. And there's going to come a moment when things turn, when things click. And it happened for me. I know it's happened for you, and it'll happen for everybody listening. The timeline is different for everybody. But to me, grit is about persevering through the hard times, through the challenges. Keep saying to yourself, this is an investment. This is an investment. And eventually you'll get to the other side where it all pays off.
Mm-hmm. So in hearing you say this, and, before, when you're just like, you just 10x what you want to make or whatever, how do you have this mindset? Is this something that you were born and raised with, or is it something that you've consciously cultivated? This resilience, this positivity?
I think it's a combination of things. Like, I've always been into self-development, from a young age. Like, I still love going back to the classics of like listening to like Jim Rohn and, and Tony Robbins and so many others. So I've always infused myself with those thoughts and those ideas. But there are moments, like I had a moment during COVID where I went into a real serious funk. And when I look back on that period, one of the things that was really obvious, Una, was number one, I was isolated because we were all isolated. Number two, I wasn't listening to, positive thoughts, positive podcasts like the one that you're producing right here, right now. I wasn't feeding my brain or my soul with thoughts or people that feed it. Mm-hmm. And because of that, like I went into a funk. And so I would love to say that like I was born this way, and that, everything just happens naturally. I do think it's a combination of both. I think that one, you've got to feed your brain. You got to feed your soul with thoughts, with, information, with materials that are positive and light you up. I think you also got to surround yourself with people that, light you up. Mm-hmm. I just went through a cleanse, so to speak, of like people that, just really weren't feeding my soul. And then I just took a look at like, who does feed me? Who do I get a great energy from? Like, who do I just want to be around? Like there may not be an intention or a purpose. Like this person's going to help me be able to do this in business or do that in business. No, I just love being around them. Like they're just fun. Like I just want to do more of that with those people. And then the other thing that I would say is like looking back, I think it's also really important to look back on all that we have done so that we can remind ourselves of what we're capable of. And it's so easy to forget, especially if you're a driven person and you want to achieve a lot. You are always looking forward. So you're always looking at where you are now and where you want to be in the future. And you always, you see this gap and it can wear on, but take a moment and just look back. And just look at like all that you have done and remind yourself of what you've accomplished. That creates confidence. That creates that stability in you that like, no matter what you face, you'll figure it out and make it happen.
Yeah. I love it. You tend to attract a spiritual crowd. Would you say that? Like, not necessarily woo-woo, but a lot of spiritual people, maybe even specifically Christian, even though I don't think you ever talk about faith. But I'm wondering, in your observation of the entrepreneurs that you've worked with, have you ever noticed that people who have a deep sense of faith, it influences their business journey? Like maybe they ascribe their work to something more meaningful, or have you ever noticed anything like that?
I do think there's a correlation. I think that it kind of comes back to our earlier conversation about generosity. And, I think that when you're working for something bigger than yourself, it doesn't feel as difficult to ask for the sale. It doesn't feel as selfish to want to make more money. Like Una, I struggled for a long time with the whole idea of making money. Now externally, I wanted it, but what was happening on a subconscious level was I was starting to self-sabotage myself. I'd get to a certain income level, like my threshold was $400,000. Right. And I'd get to this $400,000 mark, and then subconsciously, I didn't know it at the time, but subconsciously, my brain would be like, "Whoa, Stewie, this is a lot of money. Like, you're making way more than both your parents combined. You're not working anywhere near as hard. In fact, you're still living in their basement. There's something wrong with this." And so I would stop doing marketing campaigns that I knew would work. I'd stop calling clients, and my income would come back down. And it was like my subconscious, like, okay, that's better. Now, it wasn't until that very first trip to Kenya where I realized, and I'm having a conversation with the chairman of this community, trying to figure out, like, how much does it cost to build a school? And I asked him, how much does it cost to fund the full-time salary of a teacher? And he thought for a moment, and he said, it's about $100 a month. And at the time, I had a software company, and we were selling a single site license of the software for $97. And I made this connection, which was like, oh my gosh, if I sell one more license of the software and I just allocate that to fund the full-time salary of a teacher, imagine the impact that would have. And then the real light bulb went off, which was, well, wait a minute. If I make a whole lot more money and allocate a whole lot more to the people and causes I'm passionate about, imagine the impact I could have. And so that was a turning point for me, especially from an entrepreneurial standpoint, because I had something bigger that I was working for. And I think that when you have something bigger, you're willing to go further, you're willing to do more, and you're willing to try things, because it's not for a selfish endeavor, it's for a much bigger reason and cause.
Okay, so for everybody who's listening who would love to get so much wealth and they want to give a lot of it away, how can you help them? Let them know where they can find you and your resources and how to create a membership.
Well, I appreciate that. So the easiest place is kind of like the entry point to my world is if you just take my name, Stu.me. Stu.me. That's my website. That'll lead you to all the things. But if you're specifically interested in learning how to generate recurring revenue in your business, which is the thing that I am most passionate about, which is the vehicle I think can enable more entrepreneurs to create more stability in their business and their life, to be able to give more to the people and causes they're passionate about, then go to membershipworkshop.com. Every year we host a free workshop where we walk people through this process. And that's the place to go to register.
So, and I will just say that workshop changed my life. So highly recommended.
Aw, you're amazing. Thanks, buddy.
Thank you so much for being on the show, Stu. I really appreciate it.
Listen, I believe in you, Una. I believe in what you're doing. I believe in this podcast. And I would just encourage everybody to just consume every single episode. Put it on your subscribe list so that you're getting all the new episodes. Because when we talk about feeding your mind and feeding your soul, this podcast is it. So if you haven't done so, subscribe right now. If you haven't done so, recommend it and share it with your friends and family and get everybody on board and start discussing the stuff that is shared on this podcast, and it's going to enrich your life.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is my business mentor, Stu McLaren. Thank you so much, Stu. Okay, dude, what do you think? Did that inspire you to go out there and just make a shit ton of money? Did any feelings come up for you? Negative or positive? Like when Stu talks about making so much freaking money that you have the goal of giving 90% of it away? By the way, if you had some strong feelings come up, if you can get curious about those feelings, Dude, you can get some great insights about your relationship with money and wealth and whether it's serving you or not. Like, remember when Stu said that he was subconsciously self-sabotaging when he got to that $400,000 level because he felt so guilty for making so much more than his parents that worked so hard? And how he got out of that was that he made his success about more than him. And by the way, you can apply that principle to any goal you have. For example, it's one thing to want to lose 10 pounds to fit into a tight dress, but it's quite another thing to want to lose 10 pounds to show your kids how to take care of their bodies, right? Another thing I want to point out that comes up so much when I'm interviewing successful people, there are patterns. One pattern: the importance of constantly feeding your brain with teachings and ideas and insights that help you cultivate the kind of mindset that's going to get you where you want to go. Our brains have a negativity bias, dude. So if you aren't constantly trying to override it with positivity, you're just going to default to the negative. You're going to default to the, I can't do it, right? Who wants that? Second thing, the importance of surrounding yourself with people who lift you up. Like, you heard how he lifts me up, right? I honestly think a huge part of my success in the past couple of years is because I have deliberately put myself in environments with people who are accomplishing things that I admire so much and who are totally psyched for me to have the same success. That is some magic, dude. Because I know that I am going to unconsciously conform to match my peers. This is what we do as humans. Even if you think you're a big, lone wolf rebel, I swear to God, you are unconsciously conforming to match your peers. So I am consciously choosing peers that are going to force me to level up and be the kind of person that I want to be. And by the way, if you're interested in finding a peer group like that, I'm opening up spots in my mastermind group right now. You can go to unaduncan.com/apply. Check it out if it interests you. Either way, whether it's my mastermind or another group, I really encourage you to find a group that's going to lift you up and push you towards your goals. All right? Thanks for listening. I'll see you next week. Hey, dude, thanks for listening. If you like this episode, make sure you're subscribed so you can get the next one. And by the way, if you rate and review this podcast, it really helps me get found by other people who need some goals, grit, and some woo-woo shit. And be sure to connect and DM me at Una Duncan on Instagram and let me know what you thought of the episode. Chat soon.